Thank you.
And this process is laid out in the memo that we prepared for you on item 7A, and we talk about using these two meetings to go through, look at the fifth draft, talk about the comments we have, get your direction. As Joe pointed out, our staff is working now. Some are probably working right here on their laptops while we're talking. I'm trying to revise the draft in response to the comments we received. Our ability to get a draft done by the 19th will partly depend on what direction we get. If it's a very different direction than we anticipate, we'll have more work to do than we had anticipated, and that might change our schedule a little bit.
Explain to me, if you will, how the environmental impact report and the comments on the environmental impact report relate to this process.
Okay. Well, our attorney can correct me, and we have our EIR consultants with us as well, and they may have a clearer way to describe it than I do. But what we're doing today in regards to the EIR is offering some suggestions about revisions to the Delta plan in response to the analysis of impacts that was in the draft EIR. Remember, we had several alternatives we evaluated, and our consultants in looking at the impacts of those alternatives have suggested that, hey, there's a couple things that seem like feasible ways to lower the environmental impacts of the Delta plan that were in one or more of the alternatives of the draft EIR. And we suggest that you think about including those as opposed to the related provisions that were in the draft Delta plan. Now, we'll come back in April with a response to comments as well. And the schedule, I think, Chris is probably going to correct me, but certainly before you act on a final plan, we'll go through, we'll analyze all the comments that were made on the EIR. Some of those are comments on the plan, and in many cases, we receive those comments or variations on them earlier in the cycle because people often included in their EIR comments comments they made about the plan when they wrote us in October and they wrote us again in January. They said, hey, we told you we didn't like this in the plan and we still don't like it, and here's what we don't like about the EIR either. So some of those issues we're dealing with now, others our consultants will give us advice, and that may also suggest some tweaks in the plan too, because we may see, oh, gee, these guys are really right. They've identified an impacts that we hadn't thought about, and the best way to mitigate those is to do A, B, or C, and so we might suggest a little bit of revision at that time in response to that. And then finally, that whole environmental impact report package needs to be finalized and to be presented to you with whatever analysis you wanted before you acted on the plan.
Yeah, and that's the most important point. Before you actually adopt your plan and act on it, you're going to have to certify what's called the final EIR. And that's what's going to contain all of the comments and the official responses to comments.
Oh, okay.
At the present time, our consultants and attorney team are still working around the clock to go through the 2 feet width of 1,500 separate comments, thousands of pages. So what we've included here in the matrix are some good ideas that we've pulled out, as Dan said, out of some of the alternatives for your deliberation as to different ways you might want to approach some of the problems that you're trying to address. But it's not an extensive, exhaustive list of all the comments. We still haven't gone through all the comments. The responses to comments, again, the official ones, they're something that, pursuant to the CEQA process, have to be included in the final EIR. We're not there yet. So we're still going through those comments. So what we're trying to do is to accommodate your schedule, speed the process along. We've pulled some kind of general thematic comments, and we've turned those into suggestions for your consideration here as to different ways to look at, and we'll get to a few of them. One on water transfers, recycling, perhaps another. But in any event, I think what Dan said was for the most part right on.
Part of what will be happen in those April meetings too is, and in May, is there'll be time to receive additional public comments then on what we hope will be the final staff draft. And if we're successful, people will have said, gee, you listened to us and we love this 6th draft, and so you won't have a raft of folks lining up to complain about the proposal we put before you, but we'll need to listen to those comments, think about them. You may give us direction in response to those too. So we'll have to factor all those actions in as we think about the schedule. We're hopeful we could, again, put a final plan on the table that you would be prepared to go through and act upon in May. And our suggestion is that when we get to that process, that we go through the plan chapter by chapter, and the council deliberate and reach consensus about each chapter as we go through it, and then ultimately have a vote on the final plan. And then we would, subsequent to that vote, if we need to recirculate an EIR because the final project, as you've approved it, is different enough from what we've evaluated in the draft EIR, we would begin that recirculation process. And the other thing that we would be doing at that time was beginning to take the regulatory provisions of the plan, the policies, and then turn them into regulations that would be filed with the Office of Administrative Law. Those activities would occur over the next several months. The Office of Administrative Law will create an additional opportunity for comment about the proposed regulations, and then we'll have to bring the whole package back to you, respond to those additional comments, and then schedule a final vote to actually formally adopt the plan. I like to think that it's not like what was the Chrysler ad in the Super Bowl, that it was halftime in America. I like to think we're maybe in the third quarter of the Delta plan, but we're certainly not close to the red zone yet. We've got a ways to go. So,
no baseball analogies, please.
Football.
I understand that. I thought you guys might weigh in on it. Oh, okay.
We in extra innings, yeah.